AJ Lee shocked the wrestling world by returning to WWE for the first time in 10 years. But to really understand her legacy, we gotta look back at her defining reign as Divas Champion. Was it truly legendary, or was it just the best of a weak division? Today, we find out. If you're new here, I'm TJ, and today we're bringing you a new series called Reign Check, where we're ranking title runs of various WWE superstars. And how I did this is I developed a system for ranking title runs based on these following categories. You have length, you have opponents, you have impact. And this will all be worth up to 10 points each. And also X Factor. And what X Factor is, it's the intangible of what made their run so great. And this is worth up to an extra 3 points, and we'll dive deep into this really soon. And the overall ranking will be classified as either a flop, which was very forgettable, short, poorly booked, or solid, a reign that got the job done, but it was nothing groundbreaking. Great, you had strong matches, credible challengers, and feuds that mattered. And legendary, reigns that defined an era, unforgettable matches, and overall impact. Let's do a reign check on AJ Lee's first run as WWE Divas Champion. AJ Lee started from the bottom and worked her way up to the top. She debuted in WWE's developmental wrestling territory, Florida Championship Wrestling, on August 14, 2009. She became the queen of FCW, facing the likes of Serena Deeb, Tamina, and eventually the FCW Divas Champion. AJ was a part of NXT Season 3, and she debuted on SmackDown back in 2011, teaming with Kaitlyn, who I'll come back to in just a minute. And she was also a part of NXT Season 3 for a few months, and they were known as the Chick Busters. After the Chick Busters split, AJ began a romance storyline with then World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan, which was the spark for her crazy chick character that we all know and love. And this whole saga between AJ Lee, Daniel Bryan, and WWE Champion CM Punk, this lasted months. AJ was being mistreated by Daniel Bryan, and after months of being mistreated, she finally had enough. In order to get back at Daniel Bryan, she showed interest in Daniel Bryan's rival, CM Punk, who was the WWE Champion at the time. This was around 2012, I believe. And this was during CM Punk's reign as WWE Champion, which I honestly loved at the time. And also Kane was involved, and who was another contender to the WWE title. AJ did everything she could to win CM Punk's attention, but CM Punk wasn't interested. As we know, they got married in real life, so hey, it eventually worked out. So AJ, as a result, snapped by taking her frustrations out on both Punk and Bryan. AJ became the Raw general manager and stepped down from her position. Aligned with John Cena temporarily, she turned on him, then aligned with Dolph Ziggler. So she was pretty unstable around this time. And this was what made her character so interesting. She was very unhinged and she was very unpredictable. And also, she was relatable. One of the key things that made AJ so great was her relatability. She didn't look as a traditional diva. She didn't have that model-like appearance that most divas had. She earned her way to the top, and she dressed differently. Her attire of choice was a crop top, denim shorts, high socks, and Chuck Taylors. She became the symbol of fighting for what you believe in. Now, honestly, let's be real for a second. AJ was really ahead of her time. AJ was an anti-diva in the Divas era. She was smaller, scrappier, and with a character that fans could relate to. And this was around the time where the Divas were really not taken seriously by WWE. They were hired based solely on their looks and not their wrestling ability. They often competed in 2-minute matches with little to no story development just to fill out the card. And honestly, when I was watching wrestling around this time, I was very frustrated at how the Divas got very little screen time. Because how are we as fans are going to take them seriously if they weren't given proper story development and proper quality time for their matches? That's where AJ changed the game. After her storyline with Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, AJ set her sights on championship gold. She became the #1 contender for the Divas Championship held by Kaitlyn. AJ, Kaitlyn, and AJ's bodyguard at the time, Big E Langston, were involved in a secret admirer storyline. which turned out to be a whole mind game by AJ on Kaitlyn. AJ had Big E reveal himself as the secret admirer and they humiliated Kaitlyn. AJ knew that she was in Kaitlyn's head, and this led to her becoming the WWE Divas Champion by defeating Kaitlyn at Payback 2013. Now, I remember this storyline very vividly, and heading into Payback, like, I knew that AJ was gonna win because she was really inside Kaitlyn's head, and that's another characteristic of AJ. She was very cerebral. She knew how to get inside of your head. That psychological warfare ain't no joke. All right, so AJ ended Kaitlyn's Divas title run of 153 days. At the time, AJ became the longest reigning Divas champion in history at 295 days, until Nikki Bella broke her record in 2015, setting a new record for over 300 days. Now, before AJ's reign, the longest reigning Divas champion was Maurice, who held it from December 22nd, 2008 until April 13th, 2009. At a total of 216 days. And this was very rare for a diva to have a long reign in this era. Like, we haven't seen a long reign since probably the days of Trish Stratus. You know, when Trish Stratus, she held the women's title for a very long time. You know, like I said, it was very rare to have a diva have a long title run. And looking at the Divas division as a whole, AJ was a standout in a lacking division. AJ and the Divas had to maximize the very little time that they were given. Now, the most important aspect of her reign was her promos and storylines, rather than the matches, even though her matches were pretty solid. And since AJ is the second longest reigning Divas champion in history, I'll give the reign itself a 9.5 out of 10 in terms of length. Alright, so I touched on Kaitlyn. Let's break down the AJ-Kaitlyn rivalry real quick. AJ and Kaitlyn had a storied history with each other coming up from NXT. They teamed with each other and they went their separate ways. And what a lot of people don't know is that Kaitlyn turned on AJ first. In the segment that was cut from a December 2011 SmackDown broadcast, Kaitlyn turned on AJ and joined Natalya and Beth Phoenix, known as the Divas of Doom. And nothing came out of it. And later on, when AJ was going through her toxic relationship with Daniel Bryan, Kaitlyn would be there to help her, but AJ slapped her and eventually defeated her in quick fashion. And this led to Daniel Bryan being impressed with AJ's newfound aggression. But he later revealed that he would rather move on to Kaitlyn, adding more fuel to the fire burning inside of AJ Lee. AJ would move on from Kaitlyn for months until she became the #1 contender for Kaitlyn's Divas title. Their feud would officially end on January 8th, 2014, where AJ defeated Kaitlyn in Kaitlyn's final match with the WWE in her initial run. Now, the key to this rivalry was the storytelling. Because of their history with each other, AJ and Kaitlyn were able to have a storyline that was raw and emotional. And now we move on to the Total Divas cast. Because AJ presented herself as the antithesis of the Divas division, it made her public enemy #1. AJ made sure to point out that she was not like the rest of the Divas and believed deep down in her soul that she was better than every single woman on that roster. Now, around 2013, the WWE Divas got their own reality show on the E! Network called Total Divas, which focused on the Divas' lives outside of the ring. The season 1 cast focused on Brie and Nikki Bella, the Bella twins. You had Naomi, Cameron, Natalya, Eva Marie, and JoJo. Now, I did watch the first few seasons of Total Divas, and I ain't gonna lie, as the show went on, I ain't gonna lie, I used to hate on it, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that the show brought a lot of more fans to WWE, and more women got into wrestling because of the show. Even Bianca Belair pointed out that she got into wrestling because of Total Divas. And that leads us to the infamous pipe bombshell that AJ Lee cut on the cast of Total Divas. This was on the August 26, 2013 episode of Raw. Now, some would argue that this promo really cemented AJ as the face of the Divas division. AJ would feud with the Total Divas cast, leading to the following title matches: AJ versus Natalya versus Naomi versus Brie Bella at Night of Champions 2013, AJ versus Brie Bella at Battleground in Hell in a Cell, and Natalya would pin AJ in a 7-on-7 traditional Survivor Series elimination match which earned her a shot at the Divas title at TLC. Now, I will say this about Natalya. The biggest issue with Natalya is how she has been presented over the years. She's a great wrestler who is highly respected by the fans and backstage, but she was never the top star of the division. And plus, she honestly never really stood out in terms of character. Lately, she's been competing in promotions like GCW and AAA as Natty Neidhart, which is basically a more aggressive version of herself. And I wish that WWE would allow Natty to be that version of herself on the main roster. Now, I ain't gonna lie, I do have a great idea on what they could do with that, but that's another video. In January of 2014, AJ would become the longest reigning Divas champion in history, surpassing Maurice. At WrestleMania 30, AJ would successfully defend her Divas title in a 14-diva Vicky Guerrero Invitational match. On the night after WrestleMania 30, AJ would brag about how she successfully defended her title against the whole roster. A debuting Paige from NXT would come out to congratulate AJ, but AJ, coming off that WrestleMania 30 high, would challenge her to a Divas title match, and Paige would shockingly defeat AJ and end her run as the Divas champion at 295 days. Now at this time, Paige was the reigning NXT Women's Champion, and she was a standout in NXT. Paige set a new standard for the women's division through her matches with Emma, who was another standout in NXT. And that leads us to the rating for opponents. For the opponents, I would give it a 6 out of 10 because AJ had to work with what the division gave her, which was very little. And now we talk about the impact that AJ has had. She has a very strong, unshakable connection with her fans. And some of AJ Lee's fans became wrestlers themselves. I'm talking the likes of Roxanne Perez, Elena Black, who's formerly known as Cora Jade, and many other women credit AJ Lee as the reason why they got into professional wrestling. She is a trailblazer who always fought for what she believed in. Like, one thing that I remember the most about AJ is her calling out Stephanie McMahon publicly on Twitter, demanding that WWE treat their women as equal to the men. A few months after, the Give Divas a Chance movement started trending on Twitter after a ridiculously short Divas match on Raw. Fans were furious at WWE for not giving the Divas quality time for their matches, and the movement worked. WWE started to take women's wrestling more seriously, bringing up the 4 horsewomen in NXT, Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, Bayley and Becky Lynch, getting rid of the Divas title and replacing it with the Women's Championship, and giving them high-profile matches, pay-per-view main events, Hell in a Cell, TLC, Money in the Bank, you name it. A new standard was set for the women's division, and AJ played a huge role in it. Now, for me, AJ's reign wasn't about good matches. It was about character, storytelling, and giving fans someone that they could relate to. But the division around her was lacking, and that drags the reign down just a little. Even though AJ had a long run as the Divas champion and stood out, the Divas weren't given the proper time that they needed. However, I'll go ahead and rank this one as great because of the legacy that AJ built and her contribution to women's wrestling. And here's the rating breakdown. For length, 9.5. Opponents, I give it a 6. Impact, 9. And the X factor, that intangible of what made it so great, that's a bonus 2 points. All of this totals to 26.5 out of 30, giving it a total of great. And for reference, 0 to 10 is a flop. 11 through 19 is solid, 20 through 27 is great, and 27 through 30 is legendary. But that's my reign check. Where's AJ's reign land for you? Flop, solid, great, or legendary? Drop your rating in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Stay tuned for the next episode because we're going to be going over Asuka's NXT Women's Championship run. The run that solidified her as one of the greatest to ever do it. And now, if no one else told you, you matter. And you were put on this earth to be great.